Before I begin, I want to emphasize this is not clickbait. I'm announcing a $20,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and the conviction of the murderer or murderers of Frank R. Siletri in 1982. The reward is being offered by Frank Siletri's own family. You'll hear from them directly as they explain the reward to me. Hi everyone, Scott with Dearly Departed Tours. In front of me is a painting of Frankenstein's monster that was a gift to me from my friend Cindy Lee. This used to hang in the home of a director by the name of Frank Siletri. Now, according to legend, this also hanged in the home of Bela Lugosi, who portrayed Dracula. And Frank Siletri was a huge fan of horror movies, and somehow, as I understand it, Frank Siletri moved into one of Bela Lugosi's homes, former homes, and this painting was there, that this was Frank Siletri's painting. It hanged in Frank Siletri's home, and Frank Siletri is the uncle, or I should say was the uncle, of my friend Cindy Lee. He was a lot of other things. He was a military man. He was a pilot. He was an attorney, very successful attorney. He's most famous for being the writer of Blackenstein, which was sort of the riff on Blackula, which was a very successful blaxploitation film. Blackenstein, according to the posters, featured the actress, stripper, burlesque performer Liz Renee, where in reality she is in about 2 minutes of footage in the film, but she was the big name at the time, I guess. And so it featured Liz Renee, written and produced by Frank Siletri. This is a top that belonged to Liz Renee, and my friend Michael Augustine Reed sent it to me. She was a burlesque star, and she's most famous for being in a movie called Desperate Living, of course, with John Waters movie, but for stripping and walking down Hollywood Boulevard. That's all I can really show you of that picture because it's got, breasticles on it. And anyway, but she was put on trial. She was arrested for that, for walking nude down Hollywood Boulevard, streaking, and charged with lewd conduct. And she was put on trial. She had a jury trial. And Frank Siletri was her attorney, which I think is fascinating. So Liz Renee, the star of Blackenstein, directed by Frank Siletri, who was brutally murdered in his home in 1982. And that painting I showed you a second ago was Frank's. And this story is about Frank Siletri with a dash of Liz Renee. Frank Siletri's niece, my friend Cindy Lee, was kind enough to give me some time on the phone and interview her about her famous uncle, and also generous with her family photographs, allowing me to use her family photographs in this video. So I'm going to use different audio clips of my interview with Cindy throughout this to illustrate Frank Siletri, her uncle, and Frank Siletri, the producer, and Frank Siletri, the murder victim.
Hello?
Cindy.
Hi, how are you?
How are you, dear?
I'm doing well.
I've been in a deep dive of your uncle, and it's sort of surprising how little there is about him on the internet. I'm glad I'm going to have the opportunity to put it out there.
It really warms my heart, so I thank you.
So your mom...
She'll be 89 in June.
She looked like just was a really nice lady in the interview.
Yeah.
You could tell there was always a smile. There is a smile on her face, even though she's talking about something towards the end of that interview that's not very nice. But
right.
You could just see it in her cheeks that she smiles a lot, and that was so nice. So I want to say thank you for allowing me to use the family photos. There are so many really wonderful pictures, and I appreciate that.
Oh, no problem.
Well, I mean, it'd be pretty incredible if something came of it.
Maybe people that watch this, it might loosen some lips. I know there's different theories. And in fact, not too long ago, we were talking about this. So she misses her brother tremendously and wants to know what happened.
Frank Robert Siletri was born in Chicago in 1928. He loved horror movies and loved playing with his sister, teasing her just like a regular kid would. At 17, he joined the Marines and served for 4 years as a sharpshooter. Afterwards, he attended law school and became a criminal and civil attorney. He played the ukulele, He had a pilot's license. He loved flying. As an uncle, Uncle Bob, as Cindy would call him, he would spoil his niece and nephews.
And you said he used to take you shopping?
Oh, yeah, we went to shopping. He would go to Rodeo Drive. Me, I was like 15, 16, and we would go into these exclusive stores, and I will never forget, he bought me a leather purse that I had seen other women, carry. And he'd take us to the Brown Derby to eat, and he took us to all the fun places like Knott's Berry Farm, and he was just a big goof. He was always telling jokes. When he came to Arizona, he would like swim in our pool and play frisbee and shoot us with water and dunk us and cannonball and everything. He just was a very fun guy all the time.
By most accounts, Siletri was a kind, generous, well-liked man. One person said he'd give you the shirt off his back. Siletri was an animal lover. He was happy to share legal advice and lend a helping hand to friends. He also loved being the center of attention and being around celebrities. Siletri lived in this 2-bedroom, 4-bathroom home, which is now a multi-million-dollar home in the Hollywood Hills. The last time he was seen alive was by a house painter. It was 2 p.m. Friday, July 9th, 1982. Frank was heading out to have a meal with friends. 3 days later, at 11 a.m., Monday, July 12th, Frank's housekeeper, Lucia Molina, came to the home but got no response when she knocked at the door. She became worried because she could hear dogs barking inside. She returned with her husband, who climbed into an open window and discovered the 54-year-old Siletri dead. He'd been estimated to be dead for 3 days. The following crime scene description is quite graphic. In the master bedroom, Frank was found face down across the bed, his head hanging over the side. He was wearing only a yellow nylon pajama top. A bloody Phillips screwdriver was found on the floor just below his head. Blood and brain matter were soaked and dried into the carpet below his head. When they turned him over, they found dried blood on his face around the right temple. When scraping the blood away, a gunshot wound was discovered. The path of the bullet entered his right temple about an inch from the eye, and the exit wound about a half an inch from his left eye. There were stab wounds on his chest from the screwdriver, but they were less than an inch deep, so they were determined to not be potentially fatal. 3 spent .25 caliber casings were found, but no murder weapon was found. There were no witnesses. Nobody saw it, nobody heard it, and there was no murder weapon. From what detectives could determine, Frank was in the living room where a struggle occurred. He was overpowered and dragged into the bedroom. He was strong, he was skilled at karate, and he had 2 very protective dogs. He kept a .44 pistol in his favorite chair, and the chair was found tipped over, and the house was ransacked. There was no sign of forced entry. Since cash and jewelry were found at the scene, robbery was ruled out, so it's thought that they may have been acquaintances who Frank trusted. According to one story, he had the locks changed at his house not long before the murder and had taken out a large insurance policy, leaving his estate as the beneficiary, but no will was ever found. Even though the rumors swirled of gambling, organized crime, and drugs, there is absolutely no evidence to support this.
Well, I know when my mom and I were talking, I don't know how much of this is out there, but apparently within the week that he was murdered, there was somebody coming to probably hurt him, and him and his friend were tipped off, and they climbed over the back fence into a neighbor's yard and went to the neighbor's house. And they figured that was within a week or so that he was murdered.
There was that other documentary that talks about his associations and, being possibly execution style because of Liz Renee's ex, Mickey Cohen, and, that sort of thing. I guess that's a possibility, but it just didn't seem like a very neat and tidy
professional hit.
Yeah. Yeah, it didn't seem that way,
like
but
personal, but you don't, who knows?
well, certainly being in Hollywood and being in the legal profession and being, he represented some dodgy people. I mean, that's a fact. And so, yeah, he certainly rubbed shoulders with all sorts.
Yeah.
So then your mom tells the story about, how she had last talked to him on the 4th of July weekend. And the next thing that happened as far as he goes with her was the phone call on the 12th telling her what happened to her brother. And
right.
Do you remember when that happened?
When she got the phone call?
Yeah.
Yes, because that's when our whole world crushed down. My mom was just despondent. She didn't know what to do. She was in shock, just like hysterical when she was with us or with, close friends. She was just hysterical because he was a big part of her life.
On Saturday, July 17th, 1982, a funeral service was held at Forest Lawn, Hollywood Hills. About 125 people attended.
And I remember the funeral, the whole little cathedral there at the cemetery was filled with people. And these were beautiful people, and I just was in awe of everybody that attended and all these professional, beautiful people.
I read that there was a flyover.
Yeah.
There was a military flyover or something?
Yeah, I don't know how she did it, but she had a flyover, yeah.
Here's a great story. In 2015, Cindy and a friend were visiting her uncle's grave in Forest Lawn. While they were paying their respects, a group of World War II military training aircraft did a flyover that appears to be the Missing Man formation. It was probably for a veteran's funeral service within the cemetery and could also be interpreted as a big hello from her uncle.
That would have been dramatic.
Yeah, it was very dramatic. And the whole time, my mom was, and she really wanted questions. And I know even for quite some time she was trying to get a hold of the detectives to look in it again. I've thought about doing that, but I hadn't.
Yeah, and Los Angeles has become such a different place than it was then. And the homicide detectives, it's just it's a whole different game nowadays. And
they were personal. It was like they cared back then. But then it got very cold and very business. I'm sure they're very busy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of like, we're really done here. We've got to move on.
In 1986, 4 years after the murder, June Kirk, Cindy's mother, decided to renew interest in the case publicly by offering a reward.
She was hoping that somebody would come forward. Why she was still alive, because she really wanted to know, and she was just hoping somebody would squeal and talk about it. Something new would come up and a new lead. But to my knowledge, nothing ever had. And, I just said, if my mom did $10,000, and I will match it for a total of $20,000 if we can find the person. I mean, it's important to her, so I will do that.
So you're saying that you actively right now, as of April of 2022, there is still a reward for, I guess the way they say it is, information leading to the arrest and the prosecution of the murder or murderers of your uncle. Wow.
My mom was $10,000, and then I'm to a point in my life that I will match it if that helps it move forward any.
Wow, that's incredible. I do have the information. So What I'm going to do is when I post this, I'll put a reward offered, and I'll give the information to the Los Angeles Police Department, the homicide detectives. Who knows? That would be something, at least to get him some attention that he deserved, because he was a kind and decent man, and put out some pretty fun entertainment and help people. So it'd be nice to at least give him a little bit of attention. But
I would love that. As I said, my mom is still alive, so you never know who might come forward.
Fingers crossed. That would be magic. That would be really really wonderful.
That would be magic. That would be a prayer answered.
I bet. For many years, my gosh, 1982. We're talking, 40 years now?
Well, I think in Arizona, they just caught somebody that was like over 30 years, and it was the DNA. They went back through it and found. So I don't understand why they didn't run the DNA, like on the screwdriver and of the room and the fingerprints. And, I mean, with all the sophistication they have now, there's got to be something traced. With as horrific of an area it was, I don't see people coming in bunny suits to do this. They were just people.
And since it's an open case still, that information, that evidence, is still in storage downtown.
Yes.
And so they will have possibly the pajama top that he was wearing, possibly I'm sure they have the screwdriver, the shells, and any other kind of potential evidence. I know that, famously things get lost and contaminated, I guess. But no, that's a very interesting point. And that screwdriver is really interesting too, because they were just sort of incidental injuries, weren't they? I mean, it was just a couple of punctures to his chest that weren't very deep. I don't think it was actually anything that was traumatic.
No.
I mean, of course, punctures are traumatic, but you know what I mean. It wasn't a cause of death.
And that's why we don't know if it was somebody he knew and they were just, like hesitation things. You've read stuff. I've read stuff. You hear things on TV about hesitation and, not really wanting to go all the way to the hilt. So it makes you wonder who it was. Were they really, and what they wanted? Or were they just pissed?
Torture, possibly, Yeah.
Yep.
Saletri was really cut down in his prime of writing and producing. They found unfinished or unproduced projects.
He has scripts for other movies that my mom has.
They're unmade movies.
Yes.
There was a couple of ones that she showed, and it said Black the Ripper.
Yeah.
That was a good one. There's talk that he did a movie called The Skid Row Slasher, but I don't think that ever happened. It was something that he was going to do.
He was going to do.
Okay.
Yeah, he was going to do. And he didn't get to do it.
Something I discovered while I was doing this research, and it complicates this story considerably, but it's fascinating. It's been estimated that Frank Siletri died on that Friday, though he was discovered on Monday. That very same Friday, just a couple of miles away, a tough guy actor by the name of Frank Christie was killed in his driveway. He was shot multiple times in his driveway, and people saw a couple of men quickly running away from the scene. Frank Christie was not a well-liked man. He played tough guys. The Don is Dead, the story of Pretty Boy Floyd, and Terminal Island were some of the projects he worked on. Now, it went unsolved for 11 years. There was a feature on America's Most Wanted about Frank Christie, and a mob informant led police to solve the crime, citing it was a jealous lover of one of Frank's exes. So that gives it a weird mob connection. Well, We also discussed Frank Siletri's mob connection because he represented Liz Renee, who was gangster Mickey Cohen's ex. So it's just, I don't even know why I said it, but it's an interesting clip. It's an interesting bit of information, and I thought I'd throw it out there. So hopefully, Frank Christie's murder can be solved. And 11 years later, it's quite possible this one might be solved. I certainly hope so, and it would be terrific closure for the family.
And the last thing I'll include in this video, which I just love, is that what you found in that inscription in one of his law books.
Oh, yeah. I have that. Mom has that book.
That's really, did he write that?
Yeah, that was him. That was like a note to himself.
That's a wonderful way to end the video. I like it. I love it, actually. I think it's a perfect way to end it.
Before that, I want to say a quick thank you to everyone who's watched this video. I appreciate your time and I appreciate your attention. I want to especially thank Cindy Lee and lots of love to your mom, June Kirk, for sharing this family story. It is fascinating. And a huge shout out to David Gregory and his documentary Monster Kid, which is featured on the Blu-ray of Blackenstein. Here's the quote that was written in Frank Siletri's handwriting on the inside of one of his law books. Dated September 4th, 1947. May my dreams be realized. Whatever I may be, let it be well done. Amen.